Welcome to Helping Leaders Achieve What Matters. I'm Mark Taylor, Vistage Chair in New York City, and with me today is Gair Maxwell. Now, if you don't know Gair, he is a renowned brand strategist. He's a TEDx talker. Was the Vistage Speaker of the Year in Canada. He's written 2 books, including Big Little Legends, and he comes from a background of being a broadcasting journalist where he's given over 30,000 presentations. So please welcome Gair Maxwell.
Thank you so much for the kind words, Mark, and delighted to be here with you. And yes, recovering broadcast journalist who over 20 years ago found his way in the uncharted, murky waters of business and have been enjoying it ever since.
So I know one of the things you talk about is storytelling. Can you tell us your story?
Well, sure. That story is an interesting one because I can bring it back to May 21st, 1999. The radio station that employed me at the time, I was there for 16 years, and I had just finished, and I was one of the guys on the morning show, but this was noon hour. It was a Friday. And Mark, I read the 12:30 news on CFQM radio. I did the news, weather, sports at around 12:52. Whenever that package, the major noon hour package was over, I get called into the boss's office. I'm handed a 2-sentence termination letter on company letterhead, and that's it. A 20-year career is over in 2 sentences, and it hits you. And I don't know anyone watching or listening has ever been hit by a sledgehammer like this. But even though I kind of knew that day was coming because, see, they had been downsizing, a number of my colleagues, ushering them out of positions. Even though kind of like the sword of Damocles is hanging over your head, you're never quite prepared for the day when it actually happens. And so you go through that period where a week later, you're broke, you're busted, you're on the unemployment line. You're really hoping not to be recognized because you're the high-profile guy in a small town, give or take, of just over 100,000 people, and my hometown. And then suddenly you go home and there's the story of your dismissal right on the front page of the only newspaper in the 2-station town. So what it was, Mark, it was the double hit. It was, to be sure, loss of income because there was no severance either. It was really ruthless the way it all went down. But it was, I think more importantly, it was loss of identity. And even though you're just one of a number of other senior guys being let go by a company opting for younger, cheaper talent, it's still very personal when it happens to you. And so that's why, it was a complete accident when I fell into the world of business. And anyone who reads Big Little Legends will discover in chapter 2 the story of how identity was really regained. That's why for me, business is personal, because I think so much of our success in business and life does hinge on our identity, how we see ourselves and how we communicate with the outside world.
Yes, yes. I feel your pain. I too have failed big time a couple of times, and I never thought of it before as that loss of identity. But one day I'm the CEO of a company, and the next day that company's gone, and who am I now? And it was a painful time.
So, yeah, identity to me, Mark, is becoming, and I kind of knew it as I was writing the book. It took 4 years to write and research Big Little Legends, and through it all 12 chapters, there is a continuity around the subject of identity, which in the year and a half or so since it's been published has only intensified because to a large degree because of the Vistage talks, as you know yourself. When you get out there, because I know you speak as well, and when you get out there and you present your material and you get feedback from a live audience, some of the concepts tend to get even deeper than you first originally realized. And for me, that's what's happening with identity.
Yes. Now, for me, identity connects the brand, which you're the brand expert now. Is that accurate?
That's so accurate. And so the opportunity is out there for companies when they recognize how their brand is not their logo. That's got nothing to do with it in terms of high level strategy. So what we do is we really take a very strategic look at how do you create the identity that separates you from all other players in the market. If that identity is not highly distinctive and recognizable, it doesn't count. And so identity formed through story.
Mm-hmm.
And we call, the subject is Big Little Legends, and that actually opens up a whole other conversational avenue. And I'm not sure if you've read the book or not, but if anyone, I don't want to ruin it for anyone, Mark, but if anyone picks up the book, it starts in Paris at the Louvre, right?
Yes.
Right. What is the most famous painting in the world? And don't say it, Mark. You know why? Anyone watching or listening already knows the answer.
Yes, of course. Yes,
Of course. Right? They already know the answer. Great.
Yes.
The question that no one's asking, but we're challenging people to think about, how did it become the most iconic, the most famous painting in the world? Every single day, there's about 30,000 visitors to that museum in Paris, and 99% are eager to see only one painting in particular.
Yes.
Right, Mark? So that speaks to when you look at the Louvre, there's 35,000 paintings, objects, artifacts on display at any one time. And it was my third visit when I recognized I'm not in a museum. I'm in an open market where products are competing for audience attention. So how's that any different from, how many lawyers are there in New York City? How many, right, construction firms, consulting engineers are there in the Big Apple?
Yes.
So what's going to separate you from the metaphorical 35,000 other paintings, objects, artifacts in your particular product service category? So we've made a lot of interesting discoveries, but it starts with identity, and you need an identity supported by a story grounded in emotional truth. And then you've got something to bring to the market. So when you do go to market with your different, whether it's ads, whether it's podcasts, whether it's whatever it is on social media now, at least you're anchoring your identity to a message that can stand the test of time. Nike did a very good job of it, Mark.
Yes, they sure did.
Right?
Most of my members are, I would say, small to medium-sized businesses between 10 million and maybe the largest that we have is 500 million. So these are a lot of founders and people who, like myself, started a company and it didn't have a huge budget. What would you advise, small business owners that they could?
Some of our greatest success stories, Mark, come from the world of small business with no budgets.
Yes.
So here's one I'll share with you, just so you can really feel it. And I want everyone to feel it as they watch us or listen to us, however they're consuming our conversation. But let's use Nike as a springboard. There are 3 words Nike is known universally for. Go ahead.
Just do it.
Right. So that hasn't changed since 1988. Now, Mark, what's the equivalent? Ready? I'll count you in. Do the first top of mind. This is all about top of mind and securing a place, just like the famous painting in Paris, right? There's that painting in Paris that occupies prime shelf space in the brain. Nike did the same thing. They've got prime shelf space with 3 words. Okay?
Yes.
Do the same thing. I'll count you in. First thing that comes to mind when I say 1, 2, 3, Reebok.
I don't know.
Right. So Reebok is classic. I'm using, and I'm not knocking their products, or they've got fine shoes and they've got great t-shirts and sweatpants and they got everything else going for them. What they don't have is a highly distinctive identity. They haven't built a brand story that speaks to the issues of reputation, identity, perception. They're not in that, because I can't find, Mark, an audience anywhere that has instant recall for a company like Reebok, who, as you and I both know, is already spending millions and millions of dollars on marketing efforts every year to be known for nothing.
Yes.
So the more I see this, Mark, this is not just marketing, it's a bigger topic. This is about how do you build what we call reputational equity? How do you build equity so that it's snowball? In other words, everyone in banking and investing knows about compound interest. What we're seeing is no one's paid close attention to how do you do the same thing with intangibles, such as marketing. So that sets us up for our small business example. And I just talked to him again the other day. So he's a manufacturer. He's in northern New Brunswick. Mark, how many people do you know fit this? He's got an extremely niche B2B product. Okay. The guy sells thermally modified wood, which is a specialized product baked at over 500 degrees that you can't find in Home Depot or Lowe's or anywhere. Great. So the only way that he can really get his message to the world is through social media, right? Online platforms, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, this is identity. So Bob Lennon's company is called Thermal Wood Canada. The two words, everyone watching and listening, you've got 2 to 6 words to really own the market with and build equity around. Nike did it with 3. Don't Mess with Texas did it with 4. In terms of that anti-littering campaign in the Lone Star State. Bob Lennon, Thermalwood Canada, the small business guy that you spoke of, did it with 2. Thermalwood Canada, Northern Heat. Get it?
Yes.
Right. So his weekly show on YouTube and Facebook, kind of like your show here, Mark, it's the Northern Heat Report. And he's been doing this for about 4 years. And Bob Lennon, just so you know, deep down is a champion for his community. His town is there wouldn't be more than 12,000 people who live there on a good day. But what's he doing? He's doing a weekly show and he's profiling the artists, the musicians, the athletes, anyone involved in like humane societies, and keep going. How many towns? In every town, there's all kinds of community-based people. So Bob does a show. He doesn't talk about his product. Instead, he highlights people from the community who are bringing the heat, making a difference. That's his show. He has doubled his business, Mark, each of the last 4 years. And last April, I can't divulge, because these are confidential numbers. And I know in your work with Vistage, we all value greatly the confidentiality. Okay. But I'll share this with you. The biggest month that Bob Lennon at Thermalwood anyone watching or listening can look him up right now on the Goog, couldn't they, Mark? They could punch in Google. They could punch Thermalwood Canada. They could go right to the website and they would see the movie trailer video right on the homepage. But Bob, when he started this journey, his best month ever was just shy of $20,000 in revenue. And last month, so April, because I don't know when this is being posted, April of 2023, they had a month where they were into significant 6 figures. How's that?
That's amazing. That's exactly what my members are looking to do.
Right. And so it's credit and kudos to Bob Lennon for figuring out identity. We're going to be Northern Heat. We're going to work that. The flywheel works and works and works. Mark, 4 years later, the guy looks like a genius on a nickel and dime budget because he's doing and this is why secretly it's called Big Little Legends.
Hmm.
Bob Lennon is doing the thing that legends everywhere for centuries have done, doing the hard things. And as you know, as an experienced Vistage chair, one of the hardest things is consistency.
Yes.
Half the battle is just showing up consistently.
Yes.
And that's why he's winning.
I love that story. You know, and I've been in Vistage since 1995. My first 10 years was as a CEO member. And then after I sold my business, I decided to become a chair to help leaders achieve what matters because I know how challenging and how difficult that is. When it comes to branding, what really matters? What would you advise leaders and how they could achieve what matters?
Well, on that same theme, they got to know who they are beyond the products and services, which is the identity question. Who are you? So Simon Sinek did a famous TED talk, as you well know, right, Mark? What was it? Start with why. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. We looked at that years ago and thought, yeah, he's right. Let's go a little deeper, because our findings in the market is that not only do they buy why you do it in terms of purpose, they buy who you are beyond the products and services, right? Which speaks to identity. And the way you have to do this is you have to start looking inward to find, well, what's your particular story, identity, and can you create it so that it can be positioned based on significant emotional truth in a 2 to 6 word brand narrative that anchors everything you would do. I would love to be able to share, and I do this all the time with Vistage groups. What's everyone looking for, Mark? A cookie cutter, easy, 7-step checklist, right? Just do this, Well, if it's going to be that easy, guess what? Everyone can do it.
Yes.
Legends always, by definition, not only do the hard things, they set themselves apart from all others. Does that make sense?
Yeah, complete sense. And I see the websites of many of my members, and we've had marketing speakers before and asked us to differentiate, and they come up with great customer service or been in business for 20 years or family business for 50 years. And for me, none of those things really differentiate.
No, because everyone can say it.
Yes.
Let me, if you got a minute, I'll give you a quick story just to even illustrate it a little bit more. So there's the B2B story. What people don't realize in business is the power of symbols. So you can see on the screen behind me, there's a symbol, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah. I bet anyone I'm just going to try to get out of the way so people can really see it, right? But I bet anyone watching or listening, a high percentage can absorb these symbols and understand their meaning. And you and I don't even have to speak a word, right? So the language of brand itself, what we've discovered, Mark, is the language of brand itself is metaphorical, meaningful, emotional, and symbolic. Okay? There's a universal example over my left shoulder, right? And say no more. We don't have to speak to it. A lot of people who get it, Mark, would you believe they really get it? Sure, right? Okay, so the question is, well, how does this translate into business? So think about the next time you or any one of our viewers or listeners goes into the Apple store. They've got a computer, they got a phone, they need technical support. Where do they go, Mark? They go to the help desk, don't they?
Yes.
No, they don't. What does Apple call it?
Something like the wizard or the master or something like that, right?
Yeah, Mark, it's the Genius Bar.
Genius bar, yeah.
Right. and you see a symbol behind the on the Genius bar. Do you think that's by accident, or is that extremely intentional?
Intentional.
So what we do as a practice is study best brands in the world. So with all due respect, Apple and Nike have achieved that certain status. Now, is everyone going to like them? No, that's not the point. But the point is, in terms of their brand valuations, they are far and above all of their competitors. All right. So you look at the Genius Bar thing and you go, wait a second. In purely functional terms, that's nothing more, nothing less than a help desk.
Yes.
That's what it is. Right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. But how does that affect the perception of the customer? And more importantly, Mark, because you know the big issue in CEO world right now is finding and keeping great people.
Yes. That's our number one challenge.
If I'm an employee and I work at a Genius Bar and there are visual examples, there's a visual symbol of that makes me think of Newton and Einstein. Suddenly, I'm not just doing tech support, am I?
Yeah.
And I'm wearing a T-shirt that nobody can buy. I've got exclusivity, I've got cachet, and I've got gravitas. And yet, what do we know? In literal terms, it's just a help desk. True?
True. Absolutely.
Right.
No.
So
Great.
the opportunity for business leaders watching this is to realize if brand is by definition a language that is metaphorical and symbolic, well, that means it's not linear, analytical, and literal.
Mm-hmm.
Mark, where do most business folks tend to go in their brain and their thinking?
Logical, finances, bottom line, statistics, key performance indicators.
Keep going. EBITDA, PNLs, keep going.
Right,
Like
right.
their brain is really hardwired for rational, factual, mathematical, mechanical. But what if there's a whole other language that nobody else in your competitive space is exploring? See, that's once you recognize language and creating the narrative and the story is key to creating the identity. That's what starts to come together. And so, if you'll permit me, it's not in the book, but I'll give you a real life story that's ongoing. Like not every story we have made it into the book because of the publishing deadlines, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
And that's why it's great to tour the country. And now we're touring Big Little Legends in places like Taipei over in Taiwan. And we're doing a live streaming event next week with Australia, because this is all universally applicable. Doesn't matter whether it's B2B, B2C, nonprofit. A municipality made it into the book in chapter 12. Okay. But I'll give you one that's happening right now, not too far from where I'm based, in Calgary, Alberta. It's a car dealership. And the guy's name is Tim Beach. And Tim, when he got curious, he saw Big Little Legends a few years ago, and he got really curious about, well, how does this work? Right? So he reaches out. We get invited all the time to do executive boot camps. In this case, it was with Tim and his team. And we have a methodology where we do what we call story extraction to find the real beliefs and values of the executive team. What are their shared beliefs and values? Not mission statement platitudes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So who are these guys for real? Long story short, what we discovered, Tim grew up on a farm in Saskatchewan. Mark, you'll love this. On a lonely little farm in Saskatchewan, the nearest neighbor was like 3 miles away. So anyone who ever showed up at the family home, holy geez, Mark, come on in, right? Sit down for a cup of coffee. One of the things that makes Tim Beach tick, he's very welcoming. He's a social catalyst. Bob Lennon's a community champion. Tim Beach is the guy. Mark, if he and I and you were in New York and the Rangers are playing and it's sold out at Madison Square Garden, guess what? He's organizing us to go to the big sports bar to watch the big game on the big screen. He's the guy that always gets people together. That's Tim, right?
Yeah.
So I just want you to get a feeling. This is, some of the intel that we're looking for in terms of identity. So we put them through, like I say, 6, 7 members of an executive team. And then we find, the commonalities. Where do these beliefs all line up around the table type thing, right? Because it can't just be on one person, although that's a significant influence, like Phil Knight and Steve Jobs. But in this case, it's Tim Beach. So the end result, they became Alberta's celebration destination. They've had 3 straight years of record profitability, because what they do with that is they go on social media, Facebook, YouTube, with video every single day, telling stories of celebration. Mark, what are we celebrating today? It could be the 50th anniversary of the moon landing, or yesterday it was the Calgary Flames winning the 1989 Stanley Cup. It's National Umbrella Day. It's National Battery Day. Mark, how many days can we celebrate in a calendar year?
Yes.
Right. September 19th is International Talk Like a Pirate Day. You see, what are they doing? So they're doing stories of celebration, and they've got the symbolic representation with the matching cakes and cupcakes. So if it's Jerry Seinfeld's birthday or Marlon Brando's birthday, you can be sure those cakes and cupcakes will have like the Seinfeld logo, the Godfather logo. What are they not talking about, Mark?
Cars.
Bingo. There's 120 car dealers just in the Calgary market. What are they all talking about?
Cars.
Right. Better quality, better service, better selection, better value, better prices, right? 0.9% financing on all makes and models, no credit, no problem. Every month is truck month, right? We get it. What Charles Glenn Toyota has effectively done is completely separated themselves with stories of celebration, cakes and cupcakes that are true to who? Them. They have found a way to step into their own emotional truth.
As somebody that's been studying leadership and done just about every workshop that you can imagine for 20 years, I know that it's a deep question. Do you, in your workshop, we can't wait for you to come to New York City, do you help us kind of take a look into who is it that we really are, our values,
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And Mark, here's a great New York story. I was in New York not too long ago with one of your colleagues, Jerry Kahn. Shout out for our friend Jerry Kahn, right?
Yes.
And we've got this exercise, story extraction exercise, to help CEOs start to figure out what's really inside me that I'm not telling, or that could be, maybe spun into some gold, but you got to start with some. So it's based on the football 2-minute drill. I don't want to give it all away because I don't want to ruin the experience, but think of the 2-minute drill, right? How does that work? You got to march down the field. Well, you're in New York. Are you Jets or Giants?
I'm from Michigan. I'm still a Lions fan.
Lions. So are we back to the days of Eric Hipple and Joe Ferguson? Wait a second. Rodney Peete.
Yes.
Greg Landry.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Matthew Stafford was great for a long time in Detroit and then won the Super Bowl with the Rams. See, don't get me started. But in New York, with the Giants, you had Eli Manning. Now with the Jets, you got Aaron Rodgers. It's the 2-minute drill, right? Mm-hmm. So we do this exercise in 2 minutes. And the reason Jerry Kahn and that group came to mind was what happens consistently. And I'm trying to couch it so I don't ruin the experience, if you'll, right? What happens consistently in every single group. So it happened in New York. I was just in Chicago not too long ago with guys like John Page, and in Dallas with guys like Ed Burke. I think we both know Ed, yes. Right? Every single time, members recognize there's a great story we're not telling. So the one that hit me as you asked the question, in New York, there was a guy, and I can't betray I won't betray the confidentiality. But
Yeah.
here's an example. Big wealth management firm, right? How many of those are there in the Big Apple? Lots of them.
Yeah.
Right. Are they all good, Mark, in terms of managing money? And
Probably.
we will have to assume, see, quality's a wash, quality's table stakes.
Yes.
Right. So this particular company had an origin story that they're not telling, and it has to do with the founder being from the Netherlands.
Mm.
So the founder's in the Netherlands. He created this company, and in May of 1940, there was a significant event that happened in the Netherlands. Mainly, the Nazi blitzkrieg is invading, right? They're taking over Holland. This guy had 5 days to work with to get all of the client assets out of the country and offshore into different colonies that the Netherlands owned that were controlled by the Dutch, like Curacao, and there was a couple of others that don't come to mind. But you see what I mean? Like, he had 5 days to protect the assets and make sure they were secure in places that, the enemy couldn't, steal those funds, right?
Yes. Yes.
All right. I want you to picture the member is telling this story in richer detail than I just did. The room is just like, what? What did this guy do? Mark, do you think there's any mention of this story on any of the company website or literature?
No.
No. In fact, here's the punchline. A few years ago, they took his picture down.
Mm.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You took the guy's picture down off the wall? Can you picture Disney ever doing that to Walt?
No.
No. Can you picture the Packers ever doing that to Lombardi?
No.
Right? Or Nike doing that to Phil when Phil Knight passes to that great big, shoe dog heaven in the sky.
No.
The stories, and this is something I see with every group, Mark. The material is already there inside. It's rich in its emotional truth that transcends time and generations. And that's why this is called Big Little Legends, because the fundamental truth is you can't create the legend without the story. So just like that painting in Paris, that story was written August 21st, 1911. There was a specific moment that happened. Something happened to trigger it. And then it becomes the undisputed queen of top of mind awareness.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way for me to explain it in the context of this forum, is that there is story gold inside just waiting to be unearthed. The only question, are you going to do it, or are you going to wait for one of your competitors to figure this out before you, and then consequently get, the snowball rolling on social? Because you can already see the video, the recreated drama of the guy from Holland, can't you?
I can. Yes.
Everyone watching or listening, can you already see it? And then can you see the map with the dotted lines tracing how the money was protected and saved, right? And how eventually after the war the company expanded into America, and how some of the values that the founder exemplified when democracy itself hung in the balance is still being used today to further advance the cause of our clients. Yeah. All there.
Beautiful story. Thank you. Is there anything else you would like our listeners to know? We can't wait till you come to New York City, but before you get here, is there
Yeah.
anything else?
Well, I think the great thing is, like, especially what you're doing right now, Mark, this to me is the the I wake up every day and I can't believe how lucky we are to live in this world where we have technology that can connect us so fast in such a personal way, right? You and I have never met in person, but here we are doing this. We've got people listening and watching. And so, the only thing I would say is this has incredible power to be used for good. It really can be a force for good if we choose to apply it for good. So anyone, for instance, in your Vistage groups could take this content. I would recommend they share it, promote the good that Vistage does. How many times, Mark, do you think I've heard Vistage is the best kept secret in business? How many times do you think I've heard that?
A lot.
It doesn't have to be.
Yes.
And it starts with one viewer, one listener who takes this, shares this, who says, hey, Mark Taylor, is doing some incredible things with Vistage in New York, and let spread the word, right? We do a series called Leaders and Legends. Anyone watching or listening could subscribe for free. Our archives are rich with true life stories, like the time I was at Steve Jobs's house. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So if anyone subscribes and they get into the archives of Leaders and Legends, I speak about companies like Apple because I've done firsthand research. I was at the house where the garage is, where he and Wozniak, created the whole thing. So the perspective, as you can appreciate, is not what you would readily find on the internet anywhere, right? Because that's what I want to do. I want to go deeper into legendary stories and learn at a very personal level how they were created in the first place. And if you can do it with a painting in Paris, and you can do it with a city in Western Canada called Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, and if you can do it with Alberta's celebration destination with Tim Beach and Bob Lennon with Northern Heat out in northern New Brunswick, this is all universally applicable stuff. And it's really for those who are truly curious, courageous, with vision and initiative, it's all just waiting, and it's all right inside.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you, Gair. This has been very educational. Again, inspiring. I can't wait to see you and meet you in person. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. It's been a real honor because I've heard so many good things about you. And Jamie Mason Cohen is your latest Canadian fan, and I know a lot of people in the Tech Canada and Vistage community really applaud your efforts. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So this is helping leaders achieve what matters. Thank you for listening.